Hi, my name is Dydak, and my presentation is on Hurricane Dorian hitting the Bahamas. I'm a first-year political science major with an interest in how the U.S. responds to natural disasters. I became interested in this after hearing complaints of the U.S. government not doing enough to help Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. What is Hurricane Dorian? It began to form as a tropical wave in the central Atlantic on August 24, 2019. It then became a hurricane on August 28, 2019. Finally, on September 1st, Dorian touched down in Elbow Cay as a Category 5 hurricane. Experts argue that Dorian would gain an even larger rating if the scale went any higher. Wind speeds reached up to 185 miles per hour, with gusts reaching 220 miles per hour. Pressure reached up to 910 millibars, or 26.87 in Hg. With speeds of less than 5 miles per hour, Dorian spent over 2 days on the Bahamas as a Category 5 hurricane. It was the strongest tropical system to ever hit the Bahamas, and the most fierce, drawn-out battering by an Atlantic hurricane of any populated region in history. The damage. It is estimated to cost the Bahamas $7 billion in damage, which is 50% of their $12 billion GDP. Deaths are estimated to be around 61, yet no news source is reporting the same or an exact number. There remains over 600 bodies missing, with hundreds being said to have been swept out to sea. Neighborhoods are demolished, there is rubble as far as the eye can see, houses are flattened, and streets aren't visible. Many are describing the scene as apocalyptic. The health infrastructure is devastated, with residents focusing on rebuilding, but are neglecting to maintain their own mental and physical health. This shows photos of the damage taken by photographer Ramon Espinosa. In the top left, a pastor stands in the remains of his church in High Rock, September 11, 2019. To the right, a woman holds a dress her niece wore as a flower girl in her wedding in Rocky Creek, East End, September 8, 2019. Below that shows a water-filled coffin in a cemetery in McLeanstown in the Grand Bahamas, September 11, 2019. To the left, a woman is comforting a man discovering his broken home and 8 family members missing in High Rock, September 5, 2019. To the left of that shows a destroyed neighborhood in Abaco, September 17, 2019. Relations pre-Dorian. The U.S. and the Bahamas established diplomatic relations in 1973. They work closely in terms of law enforcement, agriculture, and meteorology. The U.S. Navy even has an underwater research facility on Andros Island. The U.S. is committed to assisting the citizens and government of the Bahamas. How this affects the U.S. Despite the fact that it didn't cause nearly as much damage to American land, it is still an issue of importance for the U.S. The Bahamas are encouraging Americans to continue their tourism to the islands, not destroyed by Dorian. They need them to continue to utilize their resources so that they can afford to rebuild, seeing as visitors count for 60% of their national economy. Another issue is the risk of disease that water brings that could spread to the U.S. due to the close proximity. U.S. Disaster Assistance. The U.S. formed a partnership with the Bahamian government to deliver emergency supplies. The Bahamas asked the U.S. Agency for International Development to send a disaster assistance response team to help confect the response of the U.S. and provide support to the National Emergency Management Authority. More than $10 million was committed by the U.S. They responded fast with effort to evacuate, provide drinking water, and medication to victims. They ended up delivering 47 metric tons of supplies and worked on deploying a comfort ship that held 1,000 patients, provided medical services, and purified water for drinking. Struggles in assistance. As of early September, struggles in aid were prevented in issues such as there being no safe space for supplies to be stored, the electricity being down, the communication being down with no way to charge phones, transport vehicles not being available, and air traffic controllers being overwhelmed with keeping up with incoming assistant flights. While there were a few heavy government vehicles available, they were not to be used in places that doomed possible survivors. The fight. Senate Democrats introduced a bill that would allow victims temporary protected status for 18 months in the states. However, it gained no GOP support, with the excuse being the government didn't ask for it. despite conversation putting shelter as the number one issue. An example of neglect is when 119 passengers were forced off of a ferry to the U.S. if they didn't have a travel visa. This caused an uproar, and the operator later apologized. The CBD chief responded saying that all Bahamians seeking shelter would be allowed in the U.S., despite having paperwork or not. He was then contradicted by Trump, who stated that each person will need totally proper documentation, with the reason being that there are, quote, very bad people and very bad gang members in the Bahamas. The solution. Overall, U.S. organizations responded in a quick manner with effective plans. There is an issue in the lack of coherence between Trump and other officials. If they're not on the same page, it makes the U.S. look messy. At such demanding times, the country must put aside regulations and instead employ empathy. The GOP should support the TPS bill, despite whether the Bahamian government asks for it or not. Shelter remains an issue that the U.S. could easily mitigate by temporarily taking in immigrants. This would solve issues of storing and transporting supplies. The U.S. should also encourage citizens to continue taking trips to the remains of the Bahamas that are untouched. The CDC should have to mobilize quickly, as it showed too slow of a response in Haiti in the past. Thoughts and prayers are nice, but action is essential.